A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. President Donald Trump is currently facing a significant challenge as he attempts to persuade Republican senators, global investors, voters, and even tech mogul Elon Musk that his proposed multi-trillion-dollar tax breaks package will not exacerbate the federal deficit. The financial markets have responded skeptically, with many questioning Trump's ability to fulfill his promise of reducing deficits. Michael Strain, the director of economic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute, expressed concern, stating, "All of this rhetoric about cutting trillions of dollars of spending has come to nothing, and the tax bill codifies that." Strain's comments reflect a growing unease regarding the competence of Congress and the current administration, particularly as they consider adding more money to the national deficit. The White House has been quick to counter criticisms, with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt vehemently defending the tax cuts against claims that they will increase the deficit. She argued that such assertions are based on flawed assumptions from the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, which she claimed has historically been inaccurate in its forecasts. Trump himself has acknowledged that the lack of sufficient spending cuts to offset his tax reductions is due to the need to maintain support within the Republican congressional coalition. "We have to get a lot of votes," Trump stated last week, emphasizing the political realities that have influenced his administration's fiscal strategy. As a result, the administration is relying on the hope that economic growth will compensate for the increased deficit, a notion that many outside of Trump's inner circle find implausible. Musk, who has previously been a close ally of Trump, expressed disappointment over the spending bill, stating it increases the budget deficit rather than reducing it. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, the tax and spending cuts that recently passed the House could add over $5 trillion to the national debt within the next decade if allowed to continue. To make the bill's price tag appear smaller, various components are set to expire, a tactic reminiscent of Trump's 2017 tax cuts, which are now facing the dilemma of potentially sunsetting next year unless renewed by Congress. The current debt situation is more precarious than it was 8 years ago, with total national debt surpassing $36.1 trillion. Investors are demanding higher premiums to continue borrowing, as evidenced by the interest rate on a 10-year Treasury note climbing to approximately 4.5%. A significant increase from the 2.5% rate when the 2017 tax cuts were enacted. The White House Council of Economic Advisors argues that its policies will spur rapid growth, thereby shrinking annual budget deficits relative to the overall economy and placing the U.S. government on a sustainable fiscal path. They project that the economy will expand at an average of 3.2% annually over the next 4 years, significantly higher than the CBO's estimate of 1.9%, potentially creating or saving up to 7.4 million jobs. However, many economists regard the CBO as the standard for policy assessment, and they remain skeptical of the White House's growth forecasts. Council Chair Stephen Moran assured reporters that the administration is taking deficit concerns seriously, while White House Budget Director Russell Vought dismissed claims that the bill would harm debt and deficits as fundamentally false. Critics argue that increased debt will lead to higher interest rates, ultimately hindering economic growth as borrowing costs for homes, cars, businesses, and education rise. Brendan Duke, a former aide in the Biden administration, noted that the tax cuts in the bill, set to expire in 2028, would force lawmakers to confront Social Security, Medicare, and expiring tax cuts simultaneously. Kent Smetters from the Penn Wharton budget model criticized the growth projections from Trump's economic team as unrealistic, suggesting that the bill might incentivize workers to reduce their hours to qualify for Medicaid. Harvard professor Jason Furman, a former Council of Economic Advisors chair under Obama, stated, "I don't know of any serious forecaster that has meaningfully raised their growth forecast because of this legislation." The political fallout from rising deficit concerns is becoming apparent as the tax and spending cuts move to the Senate. Republican Senators Ron Johnson and Rand Paul have both voiced apprehension regarding the anticipated deficit increases. Johnson remarked that there are enough senators willing to stall the bill until the administration demonstrates a serious commitment to spending reduction. The White House is also banking on tariff revenues to offset the additional deficits, despite recent court rulings questioning the legitimacy of Trump's economic emergency declaration to impose extensive import taxes. When Trump announced his tariffs in April, he claimed they would generate sufficient revenue to begin reducing the national debt. His administration has suggested that yearly budget deficits could be halved as a result. However, researchers from Yale University have indicated that additional growth alone will not suffice to stabilize the debt, estimating a need for $10 trillion in deficit reduction over the next decade. Although the White House insists that tax cuts will spur economic growth, much of the cost is allocated to maintaining existing tax breaks, which may not significantly enhance the economy. Overall, the situation presents a complex and contentious landscape as President Trump navigates the political and economic ramifications of his tax cuts while facing mounting skepticism from various stakeholders. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.